Okay. Well, John, good afternoon.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, we're getting back on track.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it is. It's been, we've been busy, and we're happy about that.
Yeah, we talked about all that stuff in the last podcast, so.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Anyway, we've got another great guest, a longtime friend, Ron Hulse from Bone-A-Fide Antlers. And we were trying to talk a little bit earlier about how long we've known each other.
It goes back a ways. Yeah. Definitely goes back a ways.
Probably late 80s, early 90s, I'd say, for sure.
I like the seasoned hunter.
Yes. That's where it
came
up.
We're all fitting in that in that demographic.
How old are you?
I am 55 now.
55, wow.
Hard to believe. I didn't even think I'd live this long.
Right? Based on what happened in the 80s, it's surprising,
Well,
right?
back in the day, somebody that was 55 was like ancient,
right?
It's like, how do you even get out and do anything anymore? You're so old.
Like when you're in your 20s and you think of somebody.
Oh, yeah. Very funny, but
still in good shape though.
I get a lot of exercise at work, unfortunately, but
no, it's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
You want to keep moving, and
it's important at our age.
Absolutely.
It's important to
for sure
stay active.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I appreciate you guys inviting me today. I'm excited about this.
I mean, you were like when we first started, last year. John and I even talked about it. I was like, we got to get Ron on here because. As we're getting closer now to shed season, you start getting busier. But I remember, like, you and Terry.
We should probably tell everybody what he does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We could start with that. So we're going to talk about fishing today, right?
Right.
Yeah. So my name's Ron Hulse, and I own Bone-A-Fide Antlers in Buell, Idaho. Born and raised there. And it started as kind of a small antler business 20 years ago, and it's grown into a very large business now. I think the last year and a half we've been processing about 30,000 pounds of antlers a month.
Wow.
A month, yeah. And so
probably back then it was less than that per year, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. It's grown into a big business, and antlers have treated me good. I've done a lot of other things in the past, but I keep coming back to antlers.
Right.
And now here we are.
At one point, weren't you, if I remember right, it was like you and another gal from Idaho were like probably the largest import.
Yeah, Linda.
In the world, right?
Yeah, at Little Bighorn. And she's a great gal and antler crazy like the rest of us. And of course, Don Schaffler was the kind of the king that got the export market really rolling.
Was he?
And everything kind of moved out of that, and it's funny, back in the day when I first started picking up antlers, this was in the mid to late 80s, when I really got interested in it. I didn't even know you could sell them. And so I am hauling this stuff home. I just loved it, you just couldn't get enough of it, and yards full of it, and stacking up. Kind of looks like your place here, John.
Right.
And but it was crazy the amount of antler we were picking at that time.
Because no one was doing it.
Oh yeah, and the chalk deer antler out in these winter ranges. I thought at the time it was endless, that you would never be able to get it picked up. Because it wasn't taking the backpack and going for a walk and, pick it up. It was literally pulling the truck up, walking out through the brush, making a loop back to the truck with an armload of antlers, throwing it in, pulling the truck on up. I mean, it was crazy, and it was mostly all chalk.
Was it?
But it was everywhere. And probably, from those heyday years of the 50s and 60s, when those deer were at peak populations. And, today, a lot of the places where we were picking up those sheds then, they don't even winter there now.
Really?
The herds, everything's changed.
Yeah.
And, and back then there wasn't a lot of elk. People don't realize that, but the elk numbers were not great.
Really?
And it wasn't until, the 90s really when the elk numbers really started to flourish.
Huh.
And then we were like, well, we got to find out where all these elk are at. As Nevada's elk herds are starting to increase in population, and so it took a little footwork, and
you guys hit that,
and then we just hit it right. Yeah, it was some crazy years.
I remember seeing you come through. So I live in Filer, and you have to go through Filer from Nevada to get to Buell.
Right.
And seeing, this is before. I mean, I knew Ron, but I actually didn't know that was Ron. And I'd see this truckloads of the back of the truck, a trailer, just I mean, stacked above the cab.
Yeah, it was
browns,
insane.
you know,
It
of
was
elk.
insane.
Yeah, and then come to find out, he had a mutual friend that he was actually shed hunting with, and he's telling me that he's going with Ron, and they were doing the Nevada thing, blah blah blah. Back then, there was no regulations, no seasons or anything, so it was like whatever. But you guys,
it was a free for all. But Terry Williamson was just a great guy, and we kind of were going in the same areas a lot, and we were, I was seeing his boot tracks, and he was seeing my boot tracks.
So you didn't start off together.
So we didn't start off together, and then he left a note on my vehicle one time, and he says, "We need to talk." And I'm like, yeah, we do. And we just started just a great friendship from that point on. And both our mothers were happy because we'd go out in this wilderness areas by ourselves, and now we could actually go together. Gotcha. And so it really turned into a great friendship and a great partnership.
So back then, was it kind of, and Terry told me, but I certainly didn't go tell everyone, they're going down to Nevada. But was it kind of a hush-hush thing back then?
We learned to keep it kind of quiet. As we started getting more and more antler, it started to draw more and more attention. Yeah. And, but the amount of volume of antler was hard to hide it. These days, I recommend a guy, if you catch some antler, just put them inside your truck and, throw a jacket over them or something, and you don't want anybody to see that you've been coming out of an area. Back then, there just wasn't that many people interested. And so, we just kind of pile it on and you were getting so much of it.
You couldn't help.
You couldn't help but to expose some
like
of it.
Yours.
Yeah. But then, we over the years, we got a little more secretive over it, and
do you have people following you and stuff?
Yeah, it's it's like a good fishing hole, and when you start bringing that stuff in, and guys were starting to get a little more interest in it, and and like I said, when I first started early back, mid '80s, late '80s, I didn't know you could sell the stuff, and I didn't for quite some time. I was just dragging it home, and I just loved it, and then. I met a guy, or I got a hold of a guy that was in Chalice, Idaho, that was buying antler, and he was buying for Don Schaffler for the export market at the time. And
where's Don from?
Don's out of Ennis, Montana.
Okay.
Yeah, or that's what he was based out of. Okay. And anyway, so I got a hold of this guy, and he said, it was like, I don't know, $2 a pound or something. He says, you can bring some antler. And I'm like, well, how much antler can I bring? And he's like, well, how much do you got? And I said, well, if I can get my buddy, his truck, my truck, we'll pile it up and we'll come up. I was so excited. And anyways, went up, started selling him antler. And
did you blow his mind when you showed up?
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of antler. And I'm like, how soon can I come back? And it was, I thought I'd hit the lottery, really. Yeah. And and the funny thing is, I sold antler to a number of people for a lot of years, and when we were picking a lot of antler. If I had to guess, I would guess some years I picked up 3,000 to 5,000 pounds of this stuff annually, and it wasn't worth much, but it was a lot. Yeah. And I really dedicated a lot of time to doing it. Yeah. And I sold antlers to a lot of people within the industry, and it was interesting now that my business, once I finally got into this business and built such a big business, most of the people that are still in the business that I used to sell antler to, now I buy all their antler. Really? So it's kind of come full circle.
Right.
And
is it because you kind of took the initiative to, for lack of better words, get bigger, and they didn't want to get to that?
It was just, I think, just implementing some good business practices. Okay. Treating everybody. It's kind of it's an interesting niche of people, and some people were a little more, I would say, honest than others, and so I just ended up, kind of treating everybody good, and my business just grew, and we took advantages of some markets, say after the 2008 period when. A lot of this was ornamental at that time, and obviously the export market as well. Yeah. The dog chew market kind of came out of that, and people were looking for a place to go with deer antler at the time because the economy was kind of bad, and the antlers, chandeliers, the lamps kind of dried up a little bit, and of course the deer antler is a great chew, but the elk antler is the highest. Amount of marrow in an antler, so it's the premium chew. And so, of course, what the Asians wanted, the dog chew market kind of wanted to, and that's the largest portion that goes into the dog chew market now is that elk antler.
Gotcha.
And
is anyone any better, like money wise? Is the import or export still better than?
No, the export. We export a lot of our chalk, our waste. The stuff we don't put into the dog chew market. Okay. We export the trim, everything but the powder. The powder stays here. We generate quite a bit of powder off our saws, and the reason it doesn't go to China is because they don't trust it, because they need to see it in whole form, right?
Gotcha.
As you can imagine, if we were buying powder from China, they would probably be sending us everything, dirt, salt, anything but antler powder, and they assume that we would do the same to them, and so they like to see it whole.
Gotcha.
And, what do you do with powder? That's interesting.
So we are holding a lot of our powder. We probably have 40,000 plus pounds of powder stored up. We get about 2.5% off of our saws. So if we cut 100,000 pounds of antler, that's about 2,500 pounds of powder. We collect it. It's a good ingredient. It's a good item. We do have one item. We put it into a biscuit. But for the most part, we need to build enough of it. I've got a client out there that would probably take 100,000 pounds of it a year. Well, we would have to generate that from our export scrap and stuff. We would have to actually produce the powder, and it's not cost effective at this point.
Right.
It's not something that's to happen with that.
It's kind of a byproduct.
Yeah, it's a byproduct, but they want it relatively cheap, and it would be hard to produce it outside of what we take off our saws.
That's interesting. I never thought about the powder before.
But it's there. I mean, it
is, and so there's really no waste. We collect everything, the trim, and like I said, the lower grade stuff all go to China. Goes into the human pharmaceutical market over there.
Yeah, so you say lower grade, like the chalk and stuff you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And they'll use it for joint health, arthritis. The same benefits the dogs get out of it.
Huh.
So it's
and it's a natural remedy.
Natural remedy.
Things,
yeah. It's kind of a vessel expander. The press, everybody says, oh, it's an aphrodisiac. It's really not used for an aphrodisiac at all. It's more for that joint health, healing, that kind of thing. Is what it's been.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's been being consumed for a long time. So we still ship a lot of antlers over to the Asian pharmaceutical market.
So do you ship them? I guess I didn't realize you guys actually cut them up there. I just thought you sent whole. Do you cut them into dog chews and whatever they're going to be right there on the spot?
For the last year and a half, we've been processing almost 30,000 pounds a month of dog chews.
Jeez.
And it's a crazy number. It really is. And the handling, the logistics of it. That's why, I stay in good shape, is we're handling millions of pounds of antler a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a little overwhelming at times.
Oh, going in your warehouse. Have you been to his warehouse?
I need to do that.
You do, John. You need to come
the
by.
whole time we've been talking so far, I was thinking, man, we just need to go do a video there and walk around the.
We should.
If you let us do that, would be.
Could we do that? Like, I'll just down it on the podcast.
You're more than welcome.
People, I mean, like I says, until you go over there, and I don't know if I've even went at peak times where before you shipped or whatever, but I'm assuming it's pretty.
It's crazy. Right now, I think the end of the year we had about 3.1 million in inventory over there. So it was, which is a lot. And we're breaking it down pretty fast. And when it's broke down, we can put it in smaller areas and stuff. But there's a lot of antler
it's
there.
Just
it's constantly coming.
Right.
And
let alone his head collection that he has there.
There's a lot of taxidermy there. Yeah. There's a crazy amount of taxidermy. I encourage anybody, if they're in the area, to stop by. And you don't need to be getting dog chews or sell antlers. It's just something to see.
Yeah.
And if you're an antler enthusiast, it's like, you can't definitely put it.
And those mounts, are a lot of those your personals? Or?
Yeah, there's a lot of personal mounts in there as well, but a lot of it was business stuff. I used to do a lot of business with Cabela's and Bass Pro and Sportsman's Warehouse.
That's right.
Filler.
And you did. You also did reproduction.
I did replicas. Yeah,
you did,
for a lot of years.
Yeah, I
did. Yeah, I remember that. That wild boar.
Yeah, and you did.
I used to do a lot of business with them when they were first opening up stores. And they were all, when Sportsman's Warehouse kind of was threatening going back east, and Dick Cabela's and Bass Pro, they were like, hey, who is this guy? And we're going to start grabbing a lot of this property. And so they were literally opening stores, a lot of brick and mortar stores there for a while. They were looking for filler. And we got in touch with a guy from Cabela's, and it was a taxidermy purchaser, and that Cabela's loved, we would kind of put in bigger antlers or, shed sets or whatever. And we do a lot of pseudo taxidermy. We kind of gussy up some mounts, and they were fine with that. Bass Pro, they wanted all new taxidermy.
Oh.
And so they would go out and kind of lowball some of these new taxidermists and get everything done. So for them, we supplied shed sets and racks and stuff like that. And it was a lot of volume. Yeah. And but then, now Bass Pro owns the whole thing, really. And but nobody's really building the brick and mortar stores. The online presence is really, really big.
That's
Everybody's
true.
doing that. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
So that kind of phased itself out. And so then I've got just kind of an overabundance of taxidermy left, and I still buy used taxidermy, and it's horrible, but and you'll see if you come over, it's like, oh, what is this guy thinking?
He's got some pretty impressive.
There's some real good trophy stuff there too.
So is there still a market for or do you even keep the larger sheds? Do you separate those out, or how's that?
Not so much on the wild elk. The wild elk, we cut a lot of big wild elk. There's still some big wild elk out there, but the ranch stuff kind of wrecked that market.
That's true.
And it wrecked it on the whitetail side of it too.
Yep.
It's kind of, the mule deer market is really strong, meaning the trophy side of that, just because it's a supply and demand. But they're having some pretty good success at ranching mule deer in Mexico.
That's what I've heard. Mexico.
And in fact, that whole place is going to be high fence before we know it.
Really?
And it's
I
sad.
wondered that because I've started hearing more things about the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You're hearing more and more about it. And, I'm sure I know you've been down there before.
I have, yeah.
When I was guiding down there, they were talking about it at that time.
Yes.
And that's been quite a few years ago.
Yeah, it's making a rapid move that direction.
Oh.
And it's sad to see too.
It is.
Right.
Long gone are the good old days of
Because
going out.
then it becomes a money thing.
It does. And the outfitters, the money, the landowners, they're all in cahoots. And in order to produce big deer regularly, that was what the demand is.
Yeah.
The ranching side of it has kind of sprung up. And not too many places in the world you can fence that kind of amount of ground and afford to do it. And they control the water, so they can control the movement of the deer and stuff. And so, it's like anything.
It's almost like
You're pretty soon everybody go shoot a 200-inch deer.
Yeah.
It's kind of wrong, but it's
right.
I get it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I do have a friend who's wanted to shoot a 200-inch whitetail forever, and he finally just saved up.
Yeah.
Dropped the money and living out here, out west, to go back east, might take you, who knows?
Who knows how long?
Yeah.
Now, those hunts are getting more affordable all the time.
Yeah.
The estate hunts.
Yeah.
And guys are opting to do that as opposed to, if you go to Canada, maybe sit up there in Saskatchewan or British Columbia for 10 days, freezing to death, and maybe you'll see a big deer, maybe you won't, and so a lot of guys, it's like with the elk thing too, a lot of guys don't have a lot of time and have an interest in a hunt, and unfortunately that's kind of where we've got.
Yeah. So the ranch bulls, I know Idaho still does have a couple places, don't they?
They do, yeah. They shoot a lot of bulls,
So I've never, I've only been around a little bit of stuff in Texas, high fence, but some of those places they're thousands of acres, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is it, I know they can't lead the fence, but are they in your opinion, do you think, are they hitting fences and turning around, or a lot of them just living in the middle anyway?
I think they're living in the middle for most of that. They may be raised in a corral or something, a little more confined, and then they're kind of turned out.
Gotcha.
And so, but...
One thing, it seems like their antlers just always look different.
They do. The genetics. A lot of them are the Manitoban strain still, and so they're big, non-typical. They're trying to breed that out. They're trying to breed into more big typical. Both on the whitetail and the elk, and to make them look more wild, but they're just so freaking huge.
Right. Wow.
And so
look at the elk farm we had here by Filer. I mean, those bulls out there were insane.
Yeah. Well, this kind of took a different turn there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We go down a rabbit hole everywhere.
We just BS.
That tends to happen a lot.
Absolutely.
We never end up where we
Absolutely.
intend, for sure.
Oh, I can't tell you how many times we've started. We're going to talk about this,
Right.
Yeah.
and we don't.
Oh, well, that's
Right.
the great thing about conversation,
Yeah.
and hunters. You know, I mean, we're professional BSers, so
Right.
you know, we can.
Seasoned.
Yeah, seasoned. Yes, thank you. We got a lot of stories these days. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, do you find yourself hunting less because of
I do. Time. You know, I caution guys of turning their hobby into a business. And,
when is your peak? Like, when is your
It
busiest?
used to be through the summer months, but you know,
Okay.
we do such a big volume of antler now that it
You're
never
always-
really slows down. And so the influx of antler is continuous. And
So that you get them in year round. Is that
we
what-
get them in year round. We
Yeah.
purchase year round. Our pipeline through our dealer system is so big that it never stops.
It's interesting.
Well, in
and-
reality, I mean, I talked to Ron about doing a podcast 2-3 weeks ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were waiting for a call for a shipment from.
From Alaska.
Alaska.
Big load of moose coming
Yeah.
in from Alaska.
Really?
So that's why we did.
Got
Why
ya.
we postponed.
Yeah,
it.
That's
yeah.
cool.
I used to be able to spend 100 days hunting big game
Oh, you
and
were
50,
going.
60 days a year hunting sheds. And
Mm-hmm.
I call it professional vocational recreationist. I mean, nobody felt sorry for me. I just, you know, and I didn't make much money.
Sure.
I just, you know, I just had a really good quality of life. And then I got this, turned it into a business, and it was quite successful. And you know, we're the largest processor of antlers.
Are you?
And we probably do as much or more volume than anybody else in the country.
Wow. That's
And
awesome.
and so, but it came
Hats
at a
off
cost.
to you, man,
It
for
came at a
doing-
cost,
Yeah.
you know. And so
Yeah.
now I'm lucky to get out much, and
You used to do a lot out of state, I know. And
I did, yeah, and I still would. Again, those tags are getting tougher and
Yeah.
tougher to get. You know, so you got to pay the bonus point system,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you hope your number comes up, and you know, not too many numbers at once.
I just-
And it's the game, yeah.
talking, and I know that I talked about this before, but Ron and I met like in a gas station. He was coming back. I'm quite sure it's from Wyoming, and I don't know
Could
where
have
I was
been,
going
yeah.
to. But yeah, he was coming back from an early hunt. But running
local
into
boys
somebody,
running into
yeah,
each other, yeah.
both
That's cool.
stopped to take a leak or something. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, what are you doing here?
Yeah, we've known. I was trying to think that on the way over here today, how long we've known each other, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
good.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing of each other. And of course, John, I've heard your name in many circles. I can't believe that we just haven't really
Right.
crossed paths.
Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah.
Huh. It's interesting.
We'll have to make sure that happens. You guys got to come over to the show.
I want to. Yeah, like
We'll
I
go
just
get some
said.
video and stuff.
Yeah,
and throw it on,
absolutely.
'cause it's-
Just kinda
it's
do a walk
It's a
around.
must see.
It's nuts. Yeah, I try to tell people, you try to prepare people for it, and you just can't. You know,
Yeah.
you just come in and you're like, what? It still amazes me. I am in there every day.
Right.
You know, I walk in there and I'm like,
So
what
it
is
sounds
going
like you're
on?
a hands-on. I mean, like,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
you're always hands-on and
Yeah.
How many
Yeah,
employees you have?
So we've got 7 people all together, and I got some great people, you know. And my manager, my shop manager there is one of my best friends, and
Great.
and Greg, yeah. And we went to school together, and we worked together at Clear Springs, and you know, and we get to spend every day together now, and it's just a great relationship, and
Yeah.
he's just a great guy.
Yeah, he
so
is.
you know, that's a real blessing to have a business like this and to have good people.
you're still small enough, but yet
yeah.
you're obviously doing large numbers. But
We are. We do a high volume, low margin. Which in the beginning I thought, well, this is the way to go. We're going to do a lot of antler and just make a little bit on it. And now I think, man, that was really wrong. You know, it turned into a lot of work. We should have done a more lower volume, higher margin type of business.
Well, that probably grew your business, though.
It did,
You know, I mean,
yeah.
it's definitely a different. You know, my real job. That's how we
Yeah.
operate is low margin, and
It
we
is.
just sell volumes of stuff.
Yeah.
and there's something to be said for that.
And the
but-
model works, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing with the antlers is we're literally handling. You know, these antlers come from all over North America and in Canada, and typically they're brought down in horse trailers, cargo trailers,
Right.
you know, what have you, and they've been handled like I don't know how many times to get that to that point.
It's true. Yeah.
Then we have to handle them. We unload, grade everything. It gets put on pallets.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
We put everything on a pallet so that we can move it around. Don't have to handle it again because the handling is it's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember when I took last year or year before when I took a bunch I had in the shed, and how you sort them. I never really knew, but he was like, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there, and he just had different piles and cut up those ones with skulls on them, and so yeah, it was everything's bought by the pound except for the trophy stuff, and then it's bought by the grade, it's bought by the species. Okay.
Right.
So every species has a little bit different price point, you know, and obviously the elk is the premium consumption item, so it draws the premium price.
Right.
Is it pretty much deer and elk all you're handling, or do you do?
No, we do a lot of moose as well.
Okay, moose, yeah.
We do get some exotics in, stuff like that.
Sheep.
Occasionally, but for resale or for decor. And
Is that where the moose goes usually?
the moose, we cut a lot of moose, and it's a real popular item with the dogs as well. The moose antler it's got a different odor. You know, it's a different texture all the way around. The billets are super hard and super dense, and the palms are pretty soft.
Yeah.
And pliable. So for older dogs and less aggressive dogs,
Gotcha.
the palm is a great chew. And something about the moose, the dogs, they just really like it. And there's a little different odor to it, even though it's more or less odorless. It's just different
To them, they can probably smell.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Are you like in lots of different chain stores, or?
We are. I started when I started the antler chew side of it. I started a company which is basically a label and Bucky Bites, and I started with a few partners, and then we had that going, and then but the bulk share of it, what Bone-A-Fide Antlers does, is we do a lot of private label. And so most of our product goes out, and you'll see it in a store under somebody else's label.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so we do a lot of bulk private.
And you put
label.
Okay, so it's bulk, so you're not packaging it for someone else.
We're not. We do a lot of some of it's sold by the pound, some of it's sold by the piece.
Gotcha.
And we do. It's a lot. It's a lot of items. And it's just, the volume is.
So do you
absolutely
package
wonderful.
them like as a sell unit, or
We
you
do.
guys the whole
We
thing?
do package some antler there. A lot of it gets packaged at other sources under their own label. So
Okay, yeah.
we're in a lot of big national retail stores out there, but that product would be under someone else's label.
Yeah.
So, and again, hence.
But you don't
the-
package for them; they do
We
their
don't.
own.
Yeah.
Okay.
The high volume, low margin.
Yeah.
It's kind of our model,
Absolutely,
good or
yeah.
bad, but
Right.
we're riding it to the dirt. You
Right.
know, I mean, it's getting tougher and tougher. It really
Is
is. Yeah.
I don't see no slowing down as far as people shed hunting, because it has become so popular that,
Yeah.
I mean, people don't go out even remotely like you guys used to go out. I don't hear that. Do you?
There's some hardcore guys. The thing about it for me is I can't compete with these guys anymore.
Right.
I mean, there's guys I know that'll go out and put in 20 miles in a day in hard, lava country, it's floppy, and find 2 or 3 antlers, and they think they've had a great day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine, putting that much effort in for 2 or 3
Well,
antlers.
like you were saying before, you'd make a loop.
Oh yeah, it was different back then.
Yeah.
I still love to get out, and there's still something, no matter how many antlers I've found in my life. When you glass, and you know this, John, when you glass that antler on the hillside across there, it's exciting.
It's
adrenaline,
addicting.
and
It's a drug.
and to this day, I get excited, and a little raghorn or something.
Right.
I was like, oh, there's an antler, and then of course you think, in this day and age, back in the day, you wouldn't worry about, I'll get over there in an hour or 2 hours or so and scoop that up on this. Now you race right over there and pick it up because you're afraid somebody's going to come over the hill and
Right.
beat you to it.
Right.
And you do hear stories of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a different deal out there. And I can't blame anybody for going out and picking up antlers.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if it takes a toll on our resource, we've got to make some changes. And that's where we're at
100%.
now.
You hear the like Nevada, I know they have a season, and you hear about, I've seen it on social media where people are out there prematurely,
Yeah.
and then they're going in places with vehicles they're not supposed to be, and you get those guys there, and it's like, why can't you do it legit?
Yeah.
That's,
Well, it's an issue, and it's an issue we're all going to have to address.
Absolutely.
And for me in my business, I want as many healthy animals out there. I want as many animals to carry through the winter and shed those antlers, and I want our herds to be prosperous. And when the thing we love the most is damaging that, we have to really step back and look at, okay, what do we need to do here? And we're at that point. Social media has really just kind of ramped this thing up.
Yeah.
And a lot of states, Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, they've gone to a shed season. And I'm not a big fan of the seasons, just for the reason you were talking about. It kind of favors the guy because it doesn't keep anybody from being out there.
Exactly right.
And the problem is the guy that's willing to break the rules, it benefits them. The guy that sits at home and waits and gets out there, and I can see the frustration.
Right.
The other thing I see is, and I know we actually have talked about this in past podcasts last year, is the guys who are almost pushing the herds because they're waiting for the antlers when that time of year, depending on the weather, could be one of the most vulnerable times of the year if we get a cold snap or whatever.
It is no doubt the most vulnerable time of the year for wild game, period.
Yeah.
They're at their weakest points.
Yeah.
And that transition from their winter feed to their spring feed, and it's a very vulnerable time.
Fat's gone.
It is. Yeah, I mean, they're just hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and a lot of these people, they have good intentions maybe. They just maybe don't understand. I get a lot of people that will say, oh my God, we saw, 300 head of elk out there. And most of them, the antlers had already came off. And this is like early February. And they're thinking they're bulls and that, these things. And so I think a lot of the key is going to be education. And I talk to these ranchers out there and they say, hey man, we're having more trouble in the spring with the shed hunters than we've ever had with the hunters in the fall.
Really?
And
Leaving gates open
yeah,
and stuff?
trash and and just simple things that as a hunter, and you recognize that this is the way, and you treat private land just like you treat public land.
Right.
We try to go out there and make it better. But a lot of these people, and they're zealous to get out there, and a lot of them aren't sportsmen. They're interested in the outdoors, but they haven't spent a lot of time in the outdoors.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done. I think a lot of these people, they see it on social media. They have a side-by-side. Their friends went out and picked a few antlers, and they think it looks like fun, and it is. But they don't realize the damage or the danger that they're doing. And so, Utah did an online deal where you get a permit. That you don't have to cost anything for the permit, but you have to go online, and it kind of gives you some ethics and some stuff. I think that's a good direction. I think some of these people really need to be. You're always going to have bad apples,
sure,
right.
and they don't care.
Right.
They're going to break the rules, and they're going to do the things they shouldn't do, and it's ego, unfortunately, that drives them.
100%.
It's not the price of antlers. It's I'm going to get the biggest, the most, and look at what I've done. And that really rears an ugly head out there. And these are the guys that have influence on people, or the guys that really need to be maybe changing the culture. I mean, back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, the spotlighting, the poaching, the party hunting, it's kind of accepted, culturally accepted. Nobody just said anything, and it was very unfortunate. But over time, that culture changed, and people started to speak out, and they started to, self-police themselves some.
Yeah.
And I think the shed side of it, these shed hunters kind of have to do the same thing. I think it's a change of in the community that if you see something that's not right, speak out.
It is frustrating.
I think anybody with a social media presence that does shed hunt needs to be that spokesperson.
I think they need to be an advocate.
Yeah, 100%.
And we, it's a great renewable resource when done correctly.
Right.
And we don't want to lose that ability to do that. You don't want the BLM and the Forest Service coming in and making the rules and regulations.
100%.
The game agencies are probably the best ones to do that. Now, the other side of that is the teeth in the laws.
See, that's sorry.
I get
fired up about this subject all the time, but
it is.
But really, I agree with you 100%. It's like if you're gonna make the freaking rules, which is fine. I mean, sometimes I almost feel like they need to have that But you better have the resources to enforce it, or
Yeah.
you're just keeping the honest people honest. You're not
Right.
making a dent in the issue.
That's kind of what we're seeing right now. We need that to kind of probably change
Yeah.
to where maybe. But the problem is that you got to get the judges and the prosecutors convinced that this is a crime.
Right. Well,
And-
on top of that, you got to have people in the field.
Right.
To
Well,
catch
yeah.
them.
Because
it
when you
starts
have
there, in my opinion.
one
You
fish
gotta
and game
catch it
officer
first.
for thousands and thousands
Right.
or hundreds and hundreds of miles,
Yeah.
they can't be.
Right.
And let's
Yeah.
face it, shed season.
It's very
is-
difficult.
It's a short enough time that they got to be so many different places.
Right.
It's
They do.
really unfortunate that they have so few fish and game officers.
It is, and it's always been that way. You know,
Right.
on the hunting side of it's the same way. And
Yeah.
I know the game agencies, they're like, oh God, this is the last thing we want to have to deal with in the spring. The resources
Exactly.
are already stretched thin.
Right.
However, you can't give somebody a $90 ticket for going off road or picking up an antler out of season when that antler is worth $120.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Exactly
they're-
right, yeah.
So, but if that vehicle or that side by side gets confiscated, or you know, I
True.
mean, if something more serious
Yeah.
can be done, that's going to help weed some of those bad
Yeah,
apples
that's
out.
true.
There's
There's nothing more frustrating
Yeah,
than doing the right thing. Let's say hiking back there,
right.
whatever, and then running across 4-wheeler tracks, and nothing against those
Absolutely.
people that have them,
Yep.
as long as they use them right.
Right.
But have them going someplace that they're not supposed to, or
Yeah.
even vehicles.
Well, yeah, and
It-
and that's a thing too. Like with deer, you know, if you're out on the winter range and you're out there and you see some deer and you go the other direction, and you know they may get bumped a little bit. Deer are going to settle down. They're going to run around the hill and stop.
Right.
But if they hear that side by side or that 4-wheeler, I mean they're panicked and they've been conditioned. And the elk, unfortunately, you know, they don't just run around the hill. They run 10 miles.
Right.
And then they run into another one. And they run 10 miles more.
true.
And so that is really creating a problem.
Right.
And when you've got herds that
Well,
never
they're,
get a
once
time
again
to relax.
irritating. They'll shut the roads down during that time of year, which I absolutely think they should do.
I
have
do too.
But they got to enforce it because it's not. I can't tell you how many times I go out shed hunting and I freaking stop at the sign and start walking, and there's still tracks on the road just
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
It's irritating.
It is irritating.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for the most part, most of it, just like anything, there's a few bad apples out there.
Right.
And
all it takes.
and it kind of ruins it for everybody. And I know, you know, the ranchers, the private land, there's a lot of private land out there. In the spring, you know, they don't want to get out there a little later with their cows and see the roads all torn up and
Garbage
you know,
everywhere.
Yeah, and the fences, you know, that were supposed to be shut or strung open, and so there's issues. And the shed hunting community, we're going to face these, and we have to do what's right by the resource, first and foremost, and that is, you know, the land, the you know, when you get people out cross country and doing these things, it's hard on, you know, critical wintering areas and stuff, but we got to really protect that resource, and I think we have to do it as a community. And we have to change the culture. And now that we're going to see, unfortunately, I think seasons are coming.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I think
foresee
maybe
it.
even a license or permitted type of thing is
Yep.
coming. They've got to raise some revenue out of this
Yep.
to pay for the enforcement, which I'm not opposed to.
Right.
I don't like government, but in this case,
Yeah.
we have to step in and because you don't want to wait too long and have those reverse effects
Right.
on that.
No,
on
I
that.
agree. I hate the whole, you know, raising more money to do that stuff too. But if you're the guy out there doing it, you realize it needs to be done.
You do.
You know, I mean,
if
something's got to change.
Yeah, you know, and the cheaters, you know, there's always going to be those
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
But
There are
if
always
the
gonna be
climate changes to where it's less tolerated, and
Like you said, they get something confiscated. They
I'm
get
a
something
big
where it really
believer in
hurts.
putting some teeth in this. But
Yeah.
Right.
you know, you got to get the prosecutors, you got to get the judges
Right.
to follow through on that, and they have a hard time, and they don't understand. You know, it's just a few antlers, and you know, we've got people out here that get drug addiction and theft
Right.
and stuff like that. But it's more than that. You know, it's not just a few antlers. It's robbing an opportunity from other people, and it's basically
Well, it's the
stealing
health
from
of
a
the
resource.
animal as
It's
well.
the health of the animal.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing we have to protect the most.
Yeah. I got a question because you were talking about handling, you know, they get handled so much all over. When COVID was around, don't want to get into too much of that,
Right,
but
right.
but was that issues at all with exporting or moving around and stuff for you guys?
You know, it It was a little bit on the export end. There was some issues there. We have to kind of sanitize. Still to this day, we still sanitize some antler, going to China and stuff like that. But we were deemed essential, and so the pet industry.
Really?
So we never slowed down.
Ah.
But COVID changed. It definitely increased the number of shed hunters.
I bet.
Dramatically, because people were
100%.
looking for a way to get out, and they were exposed to this, and they thought, "Oh, this is fantastic! I mean, let's get out and do some hiking and stuff." And so through those lockdowns, we actually saw the numbers of people out. Like the Nevada shed season a few years back, I went down there, and I mean, it was kind of crickets. There was hardly anybody out there. I think a lot of guys had already picked all their antler and gone home. But then during those COVID years, I mean, it was crazy the number of people and that
It
were
was
out.
worse than because I experienced this myself.
Yeah.
It was worse than hunting season.
It was.
May 1st in Nevada was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Kids,
Is that what it is,
campers,
May 1st?
camps,
Really?
vehicles everywhere,
Yeah.
dogs running around.
Well, that's
I mean,
part
it
of
was-
why I'm kind of opposed to seasons, because you shove all those people into the same spot at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, issues that way too.
There is. There's no one great solution.
No.
Hopefully
Right.
there's a number of things that we can help, curb the, I wouldn't say the enthusiasm, but just educate that enthusiasm. And maybe because, you really have to make a plea for our game animals.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the ones, and they have suffered impacts.
Yeah.
And the thing we love the most shouldn't hurt the thing we love the most.
Right.
True.
And,
I know 100%.
So
True.
we really have to be mindful of that, and I think it's going to be a challenge going forward. But I'm with you, John. I think the influencers out there
Right.
really need to be preaching this,
Right.
and teaching this, especially to young people and new people.
100%. I do a lot of shed hunting videos on my YouTube channel, and every chance I get, I'm pointing out something somebody did stupidly or it irritates you.
We've got to call people out, and we've got to hold them accountable. And
Just like, and anytime I say that about somebody, I'm looking in the mirror too, as just myself. I mean, I
100%.
expect to be.
You
But if I
have
was
to.
doing it wrong, you got to be
Right.
call out
Well,
yourself.
and that's the thing too, is like nobody wants these regulations or whatever, but to not have them, you need to police yourself.
you do.
You're not doing it.
And back in the
most
day
people
when we first started, it was a free for all, and there was nobody out there, and not everybody had a side by side, not everybody had a 4-wheeler, and we started taking motorcycles out and covering some more ground and stuff.
And at that time, is it still legal to?
It is in a lot of places in Nevada, especially the BLM regulations. It's still legal for off-road travel in some of those areas, and so that. But you've also got to know, as a shed hunter or hunter, if you want to have that experience of getting away from everybody, maybe you need to not go to those areas.
Sure. Yeah.
And because until those regulations change, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. Huh. What's on your agenda this year for hunting? Do you have anything kind of planning?
I put in for about 11 different states,
Do you?
and I'll, just like all of us, we'll wait by the mailbox. And, we'll hopefully draw something.
I'm getting to the age now where, like, so many states I've been putting in for the harder hunts.
Yes.
Racked up some points. But I'm getting almost to the point where it's like, I might go for maybe not as hard a hunt to draw, just to draw it, because
Just to draw.
I don't want to be 78 years old and finally draw.
There's a lot of wisdom to that, really. I mean, a lot of people, and like these deer tags and stuff. A lot of guys will save their points and they'll bank their points for 20 years to draw a late season deer tag. Let's say in Colorado or something,
Yeah.
4th season, and they get there, and most of the game is moved through, or at that time of year you get fogged in, and you can't. You all those years you banked for this one hunt, and as we all know, sometimes the conditions just aren't favorable
Yeah.
for hunting.
Exactly.
Or you bad winter kill.
Yeah, bad winter kill, something, and so I'm in the camp that you hunt as often as you can in lesser units.
Me too.
And if you're a trophy hunter or meat hunter or whatever, you're going to put more venison in the freezer and more antlers on the wall by doing that than, saving that for
And
that
I can
one
vouch for
time.
this, that, I mean, even some of those, I've always thought you were a dang good hunter. I
Oh,
mean,
well, thank you, yeah.
And I mean, because you produce.
Yeah.
And so, point is, you don't have to necessarily draw those the best of the best every time to.
Right.
It just might take a little more boot work.
It does.
Or whatever.
And now, we've learned optics are amazing.
Right.
So, back in the day when we were young and dumb and we wore out boot after boot after boot, we didn't even know how to glass. And you learn how to hunt over time. But my biggest success, I think, was that time of field. And you can't substitute anything for that time of field, because you learn more from your failures than you do your success. And you have to have a tremendous amount of failures before you start seeing success, and then it starts to click.
Yeah.
And for me, that happened over a period of time. So my success is just the amount of time that I got to spend in the field. And when you get to spend that much time in the field, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And then good things start to happen. And so that's kind of the recipe, I would say.
I agree.
That's great recipe too. You were affiliated with, I know, some different magazines throughout the years too, and I know that's
worked for Muley Crazy magazine for
remember
years, and Brian and Alicia Hatch, great people. Shout out to them. They're good people, and I did work for the Mule Deer Foundation publication a little bit, and
you just got too busy with the antlers then, right?
Yeah, the antlers just kept kind of pulling me back. I did the show circuit. I promoted Muley Crazy. I did Rax calendars for years, and I just kept kind of coming back to the antler side of it, and
kept you home.
Kept me home, yeah, which is nice, and then it kind of took hold, and it turned into a really big business, and here we are today. So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, not too many people get to do what you've done as far as turning your passion into. But still, it's still probably not. I know it's work.
It is,
but it's still not that bad.
Yeah, I complain. Nobody should feel sorry for me. Really, I get to see some amazing antler. I get to handle some things that, and I still appreciate it. It's not like I just look at it as a piece of meat or dog chews or something. Yeah. I mean, you get a strange this, that come in. I appreciate that natural art that antlers are.
Right.
And it still humbles me, and so I still enjoy it. However, there's days I'm just like, oh, if I have to grab another antler, but that doesn't last too long. Right. And so I've lived a very blessed life, and
still got a lot of years.
I have, and I'm looking forward to it. However, my hunting has changed, as we all have, as we've become seasoned hunters. Mm-hmm. It's not so much as harvesting an animal. It's I'm learning to smell the roses while I'm out there.
Right.
Yeah.
The whole aspect of things that I never used to take a look at. Because you're just too driven on the goal.
Yep.
Exactly.
And you're just, you've got to find a great animal, and you've got to get it done. And there's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. And now when I get to spend time in the field, I don't put any expectations on me.
Right.
And, I kind of feel sorry for some of these guys. Like, when you're up filming with Hobie and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The minute you draw that tag, there's expectations, and everybody thinks that you should. So sometimes it's a curse rather than a real gift.
Self-inflicted a lot of times too.
I actually had a client one time I was filming for, and he said he drew super. It was I think it was the very first year they did super tags, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. And he drew a super elk tag, and he said at the end of it, he's like, "This was almost a curse to have this tag."
I caution guys about that, and I said, don't let it be a curse.
Right.
Enjoy every second of your opportunity. Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot of great bulls out there, and you don't have to kill the biggest, and you don't sweat it, and don't turn it into a miserable experience. Enjoy every aspect of it. And if you go home without an animal, just embrace the moments that you had there. And so that's when I get a good tag now. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the whether it's be bugling elk or late season deer, or seeing deer in rut, or seeing elk in rut, and the things around them and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's really what I'm trying to experience now, because I missed out on a lot of that. You really do. Yeah. You get so tunnel vision, and
self-inflicted pressure that you shouldn't do, but it
happens, and especially in the industry, and there's a lot of pressure to to continue to produce, and it really takes away from it,
especially when it's limited time.
It is,
when it is limited time, it's like you want to fill your tag and everything.
So anytime somebody draws a good tag, especially a young guy, I'm like, hey, enjoy that.
Right.
Just enjoy it, and if you have success, enjoy that success too. But
Like you said, you
but
don't have
don't
to
dwell
focus.
on it, and get out there first and foremost, and enjoy this crazy great experience you're going to have.
Yeah.
And
Especially like you get like a super tag. I mean, look how much you have options you have.
Right.
yeah.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
It
probably,
is.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And you know, and you get into that what everybody else is going to think, and
Oh,
you shouldn't
yeah.
do that.
That's
And,
no kidding.
You know, and big game hunting isn't about a score. You know, it is about the experience.
And it's frustrating. I know people like that where it's all about, especially if they haven't harvested much, let's say.
Right.
And they think they got to kill the business because that's what they see on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, in
And
every
it's-
magazine and
Yeah.
social media, it's always the biggest.
Right.
You don't see
Right.
the average animals, and you don't see the non-success.
Yeah.
You just see the premium stuff there, and it
Yep.
gives everybody a sense that everybody's killing a big animal,
Yeah.
Right.
and they're not.
Right.
But
you
it's
know?
like I always tell people, new hunters, get some things under your belt.
Yep.
Get some experience. Feel how that true feeling of harvesting an animal, or
Yeah.
of being able to watch them. Get that under your belt because
Yeah.
you can't.
Oh, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to spend a lot of time stalking deer that I had no intention to shoot.
Right.
And I would do that for a number of reasons, just to see how close I could get, and to see how the animal reacted when I got there and what happened. And it was training.
Absolutely.
You were learning all the time.
So
And
I've been putting in for sheep, and I hope I really draw.
I do too. Yeah.
And my full intention is to shoot it with a bow.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
And
Yeah.
what I have found, what experience I have, which I haven't been on a lot of sheep hunts, but I remember one particular one was in Nevada where I was guiding, and I purposely stalked a few different rams, exactly like you're saying.
Yeah.
And what I've found, especially like those trophy species like that, they don't have the pressure like elk and deer and all those. They're not as tough. That's why I know I could do it with a bow.
Sure.
Not saying I'm the greatest hunter by no means at all,
You'll do well. Yes.
but I know because of that it's possible, it's
Yeah.
feasible, and I hope maybe this year.
I think a lot of people, they don't take that opportunity, that catch and release, and
Yeah.
and maybe working a bull and getting him in close, and a bull you don't really plan to hunt, but just to see how it goes down and see how that reaction is. You learn so much there,
Right.
And I think I think a lot of guys, especially if they haven't hunted a lot and there's this pressure and they draw this premium tag, they don't even bother with that.
Yeah.
They just move on to the next. Well, when that actually comes to happen, things fall apart because
Absolutely.
you haven't done it enough.
That's true.
Well, look
Yeah.
how many animals you've probably, let's just say, take out for example.
Yeah.
How many you've called in, not knowing how big they are. They come in and you end up turning them down
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But that experience to get to that point.
It's priceless.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It makes you learn something from it.
You always take something away. Yeah.
Their action, how their posture, how they react to your call or whatever. There's, it's priceless.
It is, and it's so fun when you do that for so long, and it all starts to click.
Yeah.
And you know what that animal's going to do before it does it.
Yeah.
And there's always those surprises, but
Yeah.
for the most part, when you really honed your skill, it makes it so much easier.
I know. I
and so
talked
much
about
more
this
enjoyable.
Before, one of the years that I learned, I feel like really took a step up was a year I had set a goal to shoot a 6-point. I'd killed a few bulls, but I had a lot of opportunities calling in another bull. I learned so much that year that it can move you from one level to another. If nothing else, confidence,
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
because you knew what your capabilities are, and
Yeah. Yeah. Confidence is a lot of it.
yeah.
And that's the whole.
And there's a difference between arrogance and confidence.
Yes.
For sure. I mean, like you said, you get to know, you have a pretty good idea what the animal's going to do the more you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel pretty,
You've seen
like
it a
with
lot of
bears
times,
and
yeah.
antelope, for me, the two, well, mule deer too. Elk, I don't know if I've ever figured
But we'll never figure them out completely.
Yeah.
And the
And that's
minute
what makes it great. Yeah.
It is. Getting schooled, getting humbled. It's like, people get frustrated. It's like, well, that's what they're doing for a living, is trying to stay away
That's
from
exactly right.
predators. So
Yeah, they're at it
you shouldn't feel
24/7.
bad about
Being outsmarted by them, yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
I mean, you should expect it.
Yeah, no, it's and to be able to talk like we're talking now is all the blood and the sweat and the tears and the years, and so that seasoned hunter, we do have some experience and some wisdom, and,
Right.
and it's not been through the successes. Normally, it's those failures.
Absolutely.
And I mean, back in the day,
Yeah.
we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have now, the maps.
No.
I mean, not that long ago, I was looking at, I'm sure you have them too. I have huge maps that I got laminated.
Sure.
Because you've ruined other ones, and I still have some of those. That's how you used to have to do it in the
Right.
grid and everything.
I'm still that guy. I'm not a techie guy at all.
I'm not
And so
very techie.
I got one of those GPS when they first came out, with the radio and the GPS.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a real expensive radio for me because it just ate batteries like crazy. I could never figure out how to make it.
Honestly,
and I still do not know.
Yeah.
And so guys are saying, well, send me a pin or
Yeah.
And I'm like, pin? I don't even. What are you talking about?
a bic? You want a bic?
yeah. I'm like, I don't do that.
I do. You know what I like what I use GPS and pretty much still do? Trucks here or whatever, camps
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And I shot something here.
Yep.
And how do I get back? That's pretty much.
That's
Yeah.
That
Nothing
is
against the techie stuff.
No, that is helpful though. There's been times that I wouldn't have found my rig in crappy weather or whatever if I hadn't have left a
Oh,
pen
you've
where
hit. I know shed hunting.
Yeah.
There's been a few times you've hit some
Well, there
lizards
was-
out there.
Well,
huh?
yeah, and one time I actually didn't. It was before I had ever bought one, and it was getting dark. It was raining like crazy. I had no idea where my rig was at. I couldn't find a freaking road to save my life. I finally found a road, and I'm like, screw it. I'm just staying on this road and heading south. I knew I need to go south.
Yeah.
It happened to be the road my buggy was on.
Really?
Yeah, about 4 miles later, but still.
Very, very
I was
lucky.
like, oh. Because it rained and snowed that whole night, and I had nothing. I was freezing to death, and
Yeah.
it would have been a rough go.
I spent a lot of nights out on the mountain unprepared, not planning to be out there.
Right.
And you can do it.
Yeah.
You need the ability to make a fire,
Right.
and have some common sense and shut
Stay
it down,
calm.
before you get too fatigued. And stuff.
Exactly.
But it's never enjoyable. It was never an enjoyable experience. You survived.
Shed hunting, you've done that? You've
Oh,
been
yeah.
caught?
Yeah, I
Because I,
got-
would imagine in the springtime you never know what the.
I got caught one time, and this is when I was young and dumb, and I knew there was a big storm coming in. Whatever.
Right.
I'm going. And I get back, I get my four-wheeler back in about, I guess about 12 miles back in. I park it, and I go into this wilderness area, and I'm in there about 8 or 9 miles. And I go to, and I just have a lean-to. I always take like a rain fly for a tent, and a lean-to or something. And it starts to snow, and I'm thinking, oh, this kind of sucks. But the white antler, but I'm still here to, I'm going to get some big brown antler and stuff. And it starts to snow really hard, and I'm thinking, oh, well, it doesn't. When it snows this hard, it never lasts very long, right? And that's the rule of thumb, the big
Right.
feather flakes.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, it's going to snow itself out. It's not going to. This was the 18th of April, and I went to bed with about.
You notice he remembers the day.
Right.
Oh, it was. I went to bed. It was about 4 inches of snow on the ground, and at some point in the time of the night, my lean-to had all laid down on me. I pushed out, and I look out, and there's about 18 inches of snow now, and I realized I'm not getting my four-wheeler out of here. I'm going to have to walk to my truck, which is going to be 23, 24 miles, and then it continues to snow. I drift off a little bit. I wake up, and then I can hear the wind blowing up in the tops, and stuff, and I'm thinking, oh,
It's
no.
dark, right?
Yeah, and so I've got, this is like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I make the decision, okay, either I'm going to be here for a few extra days, and the snowstorms, the spring storms are the worst. I mean, they are the most powerful.
Yeah.
That snow's not going to last a long time, but it's coming in hot and heavy, and so you make a decision. Are you gonna ride it out, stay in there, or are you gonna take the trip out?
Yeah.
And I decided I better get out of there. but the snow's so heavy and things are starting to leaf out. You can't keep a trail anymore. The trail of the stuff's down, and so you're just following a river, and it's just, it's horrible.
Miserable?
Miserable. Yeah. And I get all the way out, and I get to a point where either I'm going to camp or I'm going to make the last run the next day, and there's 3.5 feet of snow.
Oh.
And I get up on top, I decide to make it out, and it's ground blizzard. And I still have, another 7-8 miles, and it's just that crusted hard snow, and
every step you're sinking.
Yeah, the visibility's terrible, and I'm thinking, why do I do this?
Right.
Why do I get myself in these situations? And I'll never do this again, and blah, 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 blah. And I take the wrong route, and I go down a canyon. By the time I realized that I'd gone the wrong way, I'd gone about a mile out of my way, and it dead-ended. And I'm like, I'm not where I think I am. So I got to turn around and walk all the way back. And I literally thought at that time, I think I'm going to die out here. I mean, this is serious. And it was about, 20 some hours a hike and to get out of there. And I'm so glad to get to my truck. And you learn something. You learn something very valuable. Maybe check the weather and take it serious. But the other thing is I couldn't wait to get back out there. Once you heal your wounds and everything, and that.
How long does a four-wheeler have to stay out there?
For about another week and a half, and then I still had to get it across a river, which is blown up.
Right.
And so you risk your life again. And you're thinking over antlers.
Right.
What we do for antlers.
So true. So true. That's funny.
That's awesome. If you had a favorite animal, is mule deer?
Definitely.
Because I've always. Me knowing you, it always seemed like that's what the
mule deer to me is. There's just nothing more majestic than seeing a big mule deer, and it's rare anymore.
Exactly.
But when you do, you'll never forget it. It's burned into your mind, and whether it's going over a hillside or a mountaintop or just a fleeting second of something you see, and something about a truly big mule deer is. It's really kind of what keeps me going out in the hills and stuff. Yeah. And these days, they're rare. They've always been rare, but they're rarer than ever. And big elk, you guys, you're blessed to be in some great elk country all the time.
Right.
And, a truly big elk is also, again.
It's awesome. But I feel like they're easier to see one than a trophy mule deer like that.
Yeah, the mule deer.
Maybe that's just because we're where we're at. I don't know, but
it is. I mean, I think it's probably still one of the hardest, and it's animals to obtain as far as a true trophy mule deer.
And as the years go, like even where we live right here, there used to be some sought after late hunts, trophy hunts that there always was some big bucks getting killed.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing that like you used to, for sure.
You really aren't. It used to be a guarantee that you were probably going to see a big deer on a late hunt like that. Something that you were really, looking to harvest. Now, you can spend the whole season in a great situation and not see that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the game has changed a lot.
Sure.
And no longer do you and a buddy maybe go out on one of these great tags, and it seems like it's you, a buddy, all their buddies, all your buddies. And you get these huge presents out there.
Yeah.
And with all the technology we have, all the optics, the game cameras, there's just not many secrets anymore.
Right.
That's true.
100%.
Everything is known, and I don't know that I like that. Now you've got the infrared.
Yeah.
The night vision and stuff. I mean, that's got to change. We technology's great, but at a certain point we have to kind of push back against it, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of swallow some of that stuff.
It is.
When you're old, I don't know really.
Yeah, you're old but I think it still needs to be, it needs to be a hunt, and it needs to be hunter skill that is more of the equation than technology.
Yeah, I mean even and I'm not bagging on at all any long range shooting, that type of thing, but to me, I guess that's why I like bow hunting so much. Granted, and I mean it takes skill, a certain amount of skill to make a good shot, long range, blah blah blah. But for me, I do enjoy the whole aspect of outsmarting and getting
Close.
I always tell people
It's intimate.
I love to get so close I can't miss, even though you can.
Yes.
At close
It-
distances.
It happens.
There's just something about getting so close and having them outsmarted.
Yeah.
I know John's video of that antelope we snuck up on, bedded down 20 yards or less, even though it blew the shot.
Yeah. It happens.
I blew the shot.
It happens.
I mean, it hit a limb, but still,
limb,
it still got blown.
Yeah.
But to me, just getting that close, especially antelope, are so
Yes.
tough to sneak up bedded.
Oh, incredibly difficult.
That to me was a success.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just that.
Yeah,
It was a fun hunt.
that was a great hunt.
Well, and with archery hunting, and any type of hunting, you know, taking a good shot and making a bad one, it happens.
Yeah.
If you've
Right.
hunted long enough, bad things are going to happen.
Yep.
But if you take a bad shot and make a bad shot, then it's on you.
Yeah.
And inexcusable.
Yeah. And yeah, the risky shots.
And that's why one thing I know there's, you know, with the long range shooting, it's a big craze. I'm not capable of doing that. You know, I mean, the guns are capable. I just, you
Right.
know, but a lot of people, they get this gun that's capable of doing that, but maybe they aren't capable of
Right.
doing that. And it gives them a false sense of this is easy to pull off. And, you know, at those ranges, so much can go wrong. And I
had a coos deer tag in Arizona, and I had a friend, because I'm not as gun savvy as you know some people. I had a friend that set me up, helped me get my gun set up and whatnot. And I was, you know, I had a 3-inch group at 700 yards, 3 bullets. And he's like, "Man, you'll be able to whack one way out there." I'm like, "No way." And he's like, "Well, look at that group." I'm like, "I'm on a bench. There's absolutely no wind.
my heart rate is good.
Yeah, there's no horns, no hair." And,
Yeah.
and I set my goal, because I archery hunted them enough. I know I can get a couple
Absolutely.
300 yards easily.
Absolutely.
That's easy.
Yeah.
It's the archery range for, especially on a coos deer. And I remember actually I called up Chris Denham when I was down in Arizona, and he's going to try to come down and help. But I told him, I was like, "Man," when I went down there, I set target up. It was a different ball game.
Yeah.
Sitting in a prone position or off a pack or something was totally different than a bench.
Yeah.
And you got wind, and you have a different humidity and all that stuff. So I set my goal at 300. And like he made a great point. He goes, "I know one thing, at 300 yards or less, it's probably going to die. Anything beyond that, you know, too many variables can
There are,
happen."
yeah.
And I end up shooting at 160.
Yeah. Great.
I mean,
That's
I
awesome.
just thought I can get closer. I
Yeah.
can get closer. Not that.
I've always been that way too, partly because I'm not that good a shot. And so,
Right.
you know, I was forced to do that. And
Yeah.
I'm not the guy that likes to go out and just punch paper and,
Yeah.
and this. And that's why I kind of gravitated to archery and muzzleloader
Muzzleloader,
hunting.
you do a lot of
I do a lot of muzzleloader hunting. I love muzzleloader hunting.
Me too.
I love the fact that Idaho does a traditional type of
Yeah.
muzzleloader. My only gripe is the bullet.
Yep.
If they really need to let us shoot a better bullet.
Yep.
Just for the animal.
Just for the
sake.
animal.
Yeah,
Yeah, just the
100%.
performance of the bullet.
Yep,
And,
totally agree.
and I'm okay with the loose powder, and I'm okay, you know, no scopes and getting out there and not knowing if the gun's gonna, you know, if they're gonna hang fire or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean,
Right.
I'm okay with that. But that holy lead bullet
Yeah.
is a real limitation on the function of the bullet.
Yep.
Right.
And I think it
The
would
accuracy
especially with elk.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see it a lot out there. And
Yeah.
you know, and to make a good shot and it turns into a bad shot, might be some of the bullet function in our muzzleloaders here in this state.
I know Idaho is usually one of the last states to
Yeah.
take up on some of these things, which I do like to a
I do
point.
too. I like that.
But then, excuse me, you also got to come down to the ethical point for the animal. You know,
Right.
it's such a fine line.
It is.
Because they're always so worried about, and I get it. They're always so worried about, okay, well, if we give into this, then we're going to have to give into that.
Right.
And I get that point about it. But all you got to do is stand your ground and say, okay, because of data,
yeah.
you know, ethics-wise, for the sake of the animal,
Yep.
you know, we need to look at other options.
I'd like to see them review that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
a lifelong muzzleloader hunter, and
You've done some out-of-state muzzleloader
I have,
too,
yeah,
right?
and I've shot a lot of game over the years with muzzleloaders, and I abide by the rules. But in Idaho, if I'm out of state, I won't put a scope on a gun, which might be stupid, but I still like that traditional aspect of it.
Right.
But I will shoot a better bullet.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference.
I bet.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool. Yeah. I love muzzleloader hunting too. It's not that many people do it either.
Yeah,
Which I like.
It's easier to draw those tags. People are still scared of muzzleloaders a little bit.
Yep.
And archery is tough to get a good archery tag. It's tough to get a good rifle. Almost impossible to get a good rifle tag. But that muzzleloader has always kind of still had a little window in there.
Right. We
And,
probably shouldn't say this either, but you get to hunt during for mule deer. I've drawn 3 mule deer muzzleloader tags, and they're right during the rut and stuff, and I love that.
Oh, it's great.
And they have some good rifle or muzzleloader elk hunts too that are in September.
Yeah, the bull.
Yeah.
I've drawn one muzzleloader elk tag, and that was right. Well, it was October 1st, but it seems like they're rutting later.
Oh, yeah,
They are later.
So that was fine. It worked out good.
Yeah.
But again, I shot a bull, and with that bullet, he should have died right away. He did die.
Right.
I had to wait till the next day.
Yeah.
And he was right there where I left him standing. But
Yeah, but it does. Yeah, it causes some doubt. I've seen, and you're never going to get it. It's the other thing. You're never going to get an exit wound with a muzzleloader.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get a great blood trail. And
right.
So you
That's
need
so
that
true.
bullet to function well and stay together.
That's a really good
and
point.
do the
That
things
is a
it
good
needs
point.
to do, because with most of the time with a bow, those things are so fast, and you get a good shot and you'll get a pass it through, and with a rifle, same type of deal.
Yeah.
But with a muzzleloader, I've shot a ton of game, and it never goes out the other side. It's a lot of times it's on the hide on the outside and slap back, but you do not get that
extra hole. I know one thing that I haven't muzzleloader hunted, and I think it's a great option though. I mean, as long as I can archery hunt, but I've always said when I can't archery hunt anymore, I think I'll probably gravitate to that. Is how important it is to, and I don't think a lot of people realize, to get a correct load for muzzleloader. I think people sometimes, I've talked to people and they just think, oh, you just put the powder in there, put the bullet in there, but the patch thickness and all those different things plays such a different role in.
And everybody's got the speed loaders and stuff now, and the other problem with that is the pellets is one thing, but excitement. And if you've made a shot and whatever, and you still got to get that loose powder in that, and you got to get it all in there. You've pre-measured it out, but I don't know how many times it runs down the side of my hand, and then you're like, oh boy,
exactly. Well,
now what?
One of the reasons I had to leave that bull overnight too was I had shot him, and then I grabbed a speed loader to reload because I was able to get back up on him again. I grabbed an empty one. Well, not paying attention, I freaking thought I filled with powder, and I shoved the bullet down in there, and I couldn't get the bullet out. So I had to come back the next day. I mean, he was dead right there, but
it happens.
It's kind of funny.
And I guess if you don't get excited, then
exactly.
Fortunately for me, I've always been the type of guy that I remain pretty calm and cool until after the shot.
Yeah.
And then it's like the adrenaline really comes in. But I've got buddies that are the other way around, and I'm like, wow, that is a really debilitating issue.
Right.
And
I never try to pay attention, and I may get pretty excited too. I know I do sometimes, but I guess it's a matter of letting that control you. But after the shot, good luck.
Yeah, that's always.
I missed a bull one time. I remember my rangefinder having problems with it. But after I missed the bull, I ranged it with one hand first. Missed the bull, and when it come time to range it again, I had to use both hands and set my elbows down because I was just like.
But that's fun. That's you didn't get excited.
Right.
So,
anyway, I really enjoy your
well, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you guys.
Catch up with you.
It's interesting, like you said, we're going to have a conversation, and we really did go here and there. I thought maybe we'd be a little more earmarked on antlers, but this has been a real treat.
It has.
Good,
Well, you got a lot of good story, and like I says, I've always admire your hunting skills.
Well, likewise,
as well as your experience with the shed hunting.
Yeah.
Perfect time. We got shed season going to be starting here pretty soon.
It is, yeah, and hopefully, people have that cabin fever and they want to get out, and when the weather gets nice. But let's
Best
all
way
just
to-
be real mindful
Exactly.
of what we're
Absolutely,
pursuing.
yeah. And the best way to get a hold of you is
Yeah, probably my cell phone, which is
Can you throw that number?
208-539-9265, and you can look us up online, Bone-A-Fide Antlers.com. But just shoot me a text. And like I said, I put a invite to anybody out there. If you're an antler enthusiast, we may be busy, it may whatever, but you're more than welcome to come in and walk through there and see the place. It's really something to see.
It is.
And I encourage people to stop by and see it, especially if you got friends or family in town and you're like, hey,
That's
you want to see
true.
something cool?
Yeah.
And you're more than welcome anytime. Anybody
Sure,
is.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. We'll get some video.
It's fun.
Probably throw a little video on this
Yeah.
with the podcast. Don't you think, John?
Maybe, or I was just thinking we'd just do a whole tour and do a whole video of that. I think that would be
That'd
cooler.
be a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe show the process if you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, some of that's a little,
Yeah.
little
So,
secretive,
that's fine,
and
and
stuff.
that's- I totally get that.
Yeah.
But what
yeah.
you can just.
But absolutely, yeah, I'd love to have you guys over anytime. Like I
Okay.
said,
Appreciate it.
Super
it's
cool.
been a real pleasure.
Right.
All right, Ron. Thanks
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
much.
thanks for
Up
coming.
coming.
Thanks for having
Look
me.
forward to having you again. We'll
Yeah,
maybe have some
anytime.
hunts and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, good luck with this. Like I said, the season hunter. I think it's a great angle, and I love it.
Good.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you,
You
man.
bet.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the subscribers.
See you guys.
Talk to you later.